proposing, and I salute you for this wonderful thought process, I can see. And I'm going to talk to you about biomarkers in the GDM, and I'm going to continue from where Dr. Lakshmi has continued her has taught us about how to really approach. So once again, Dr. Mayur and team, thank you very much for the wonderful opportunity. And of course, I would like to wish all of you from Mumbai a very happy Ganesh festival. Mumbai is absolutely buzzing these days, and Ganpati and the celebrations are on. So during these periods, I wish everyone to be here in Mumbai, at least to witness that I would say the life, the joy that people have here. And for my agenda today, as Dr. Lakshmi has already said, the ball rolling. GDM, she has already spoken, points to celebrate. I'm going to talk to you about biomarkers in pregnancy, and especially GDM, how the biomarkers have played the role. What are biomarkers? Are they really important? What are the biomarkers that should be of importance to you in the gestational diabetes? And do they have any correlation as far as the outcomes related to pregnancy are concerned, whether they are maternal outcomes or the fetal outcomes? Biomarker was a term which was probably fairly alien to most of us before COVID time. And then suddenly after COVID, we started realizing, and this outburst of biomarker definition has come out. And biomarkers is a portmanteau of two different terms: biological markers, which are the characters which are obviously measured by or evaluated as an indicator of a normal biological process or a pathological process or a pharmacological response to the therapeutic intervention. Now, this is an NIH definition. There are various different definitions, and I'm not going to the details about it. GDM definitions, Dr. Lakshmi has beautifully talked, but I was wondered that it was for the first time in 2003. Dr. Lakshmi has probably showed us the entire data right from 1964. But ADA for the first time in 2003 came out with an actual definition of GDM. So that is the place where we need to start wondering still more. And also she has beautifully covered, what are the implications of GDM. And IID PSG has come out with a statement that in the last 2 decades, GDM incidence has increased. So being an interplay of specific gene mutations, dysregulated placental hormones, beta cell injury, infuriated by the advancing age and diabetogenic milieu, which we all, especially Southeast Asian population, lives in. Maybe probably we are in that era of early GDM onslaught. But my challenge is that is it the right age of 24th week or 28th week is the time to really look for GDM? And as Dr. Lakshmi has beautifully pointed out, that it has got a epigenetic impact. So if you want to talk about epigenetics, we need to look even before mother becomes or a girl becomes pregnant. Most of the associations, as Dr. Lakshmi has told us, that we mostly screen at 24th week. Even though she rightly said that, whatever is the time of the first visit, you should screen. But most of them are, screened at the 24th week of gestation. But Dr. Sheshaya, in the same Chennai study paper, has shown that 62% patients were detected even before 24 weeks of age. And the metabolic challenges or the alterations, they kick off much before than 24 weeks. So we need to not only predict, suspect, but we also have to test early, and test early with the reliable parameters. Because what we followed the model of conventional, testings were probably, on few of the parameters that we were available. And this is what Dr. Lakshmi was talking about, that epigenetic footprints actually guide the metabolic alterations, whether they are functional or structural alterations in the fetus. But when the fetus lives in the vulnerable milieu, the chances of developing the perinatal challenges and even in the further life are far higher than in comparison to the mother who has got a normal sugar metabolism. So epigenetic changes not only alter the metabolic milieu, but they also have an ability to alter the DNA alterations and the gene expressions. And these are all the changes which are there, like DNA methylation, histone modification, non-coding RNA processes. I'm not going into the details about it. Dr. Lakshmi also has spoke about this beautiful phenomena that happens, that overall in pregnancy you need hyperglycemia, because we know that glucose is the only nutrition which processes placenta, isn't it? And that is the reason why, nature wants mothers to be little on the hyperglycemic side. And hence, there is a beta cell, the islet cell, probably number of islets they grow up, the size of islets they grow up, the beta cell mass grow up in response to increase in the insulin resistance. So there is an islet compensatory response to the raised insulin resistance as well. And during lactation, as you can see on the screen, the process starts reversing down. But what happens in GDM is that islet compensation goes down badly. So there is a very poor islet compensation happening, and hence there is I would say, non-competitive raised insulin resistance that the mother faces, and that leads to hyperglycemia. And these are all the things that Dr. Lakshmi has shown. These are all the factors which will cause increase in the resistance of the insulin or reduction in the glucose absorption. So the conventional predictive model of GDM that we practice, we use our clinical risk assessment, isn't it? We always do that by taking a correct good history, maybe a detailed family history, a personal history, the nutrition history, the environmental history, the history of addictions, everything we consider. And along with that, we use all these things, including the latest addition of metabolically associated steatohepatitis or steatoliver disease, isn't it? But these models were unfortunately not so sensitive or not so specific to pick up GDM in early pregnancy. So let us look at the possible useful biomarkers which can be of help. And there are so many out there. There are glycemic markers. One of the most interesting of all is 1,5-alpha anhydroglucitol levels. It is a short-term glycemic marker. And I'm going to discuss that in my subsequent slides. Insulin resistance marker, one of the best is the sex hormone binding globulin. And it has got a beautiful specificity as well as sensitivity as far as picking up pregnancy. And it is possible to practice this in your clinical day-to-day, I would say, gynecological and obstetric management. Inflammatory markers like CRPs and DNF alphas may not be too clinically applicable, but HSCRP is another very good marker that can be easily utilized in our day-to-day clinical practice. Urine biomarkers, maybe probably the adipocyte biomarkers like leptins and adiponectins and resistins and bisphatins, they are only in the clinical research settings or the clinical trial settings. Genetic biomarkers are same in the research settings only. Other biomarkers probably might be of little importance in the list that you're seeing on the screen is vitamin D. So let us look at few of them and let us discuss them. First is usually this adipocyte biomarker called as adipokines or adiponectin. Now we all know adipokines are secreted by the adipocytes, and these are the peptides which are secreted, which have beautiful anti-atherogenic and also anti-inflammatory properties, and they are insulin sensitizers, isn't it? In normal pregnancy, these adiponectins, they are on the little lower side. But especially in the first trimester, if this is significantly low, more than twice the lower limit of the normal, if it is lower, then the risk of developing gestational diabetes for this mother is almost high by 5-fold. And usually it is recommended that this has to be done as early as 6 to 14 weeks of pregnancy. So it is, even though it is in the research setting, it is possible, but it is a beautiful predictor of a possible upcoming GDM in the mother in the future pregnancy. 1,5-alpha anhydroglucitol, I like this. This is a short-term glycemic control marker, especially targets or depicts the prandial glucose expression. We all know about this. This is inert polyiol, and normally again it declines in the pregnancy. We know that better the diabetes control, probably the better, the higher is the anhydroglucitol levels. Worse is diabetes control, lower the anhydroglucitol levels they go. In GDM, significantly lower anhydroglucitol tells you that probably there is something wrong. Even though you're not picking them up on OGTTs, you're not picking them on HbA1cs, probably these are the patients who are likely to develop GDM, and the risk of development of GDM is around 5 to 6 times higher in those patients who have got more than 3 times lower blood levels of 5-AG-alpha in the patients, those who are picked up or tried in the first trimester. And this can be easily used in our day-to-day clinical practice and as a good predictive value of being a moderate predictor. Leptin, even though it is talked about, it is a poor predictor. I will not go into the details. Cisplatin again is an adipocyte, and probably a biomarker that we probably discussed. It is pro-inflammatory biomarker. I don't want to go into the details because this is not applicable clinically. DNF alphas, we did this in COVID, but rather than DNF alpha and interleukin 6s, I would prefer to use the HSCRP, which is, I would say, a poor man's interleukin 6 estimation or a TNF alpha estimation. We all know that CRP is secreted in the liver in response to the inflammation and in response to the higher levels of interleukin 6 as well as the TNF alpha levels. And we know that this is a pro-inflammatory peptide which gets secreted by liver, HSCRP I'm talking about. And you are aware that in obesity, in the insulin resistant state or metabolic syndrome state, probably these levels are very high. Normal levels are less than 1 milligram per liter. And in normal pregnancy, it is normal or slightly higher. And especially if the mother is obese, probably it is likely to be a little higher. But then if it is more than 3.5 times higher than normal, so if the levels are more than 3 milligrams per deciliter, in the first trimester itself, will increase the risk of development of GDM in this mother by almost by 3 times. So it can be done clinically, it can be utilized as a clinical tool, and the prediction value is around moderate. Same way, sex hormone binding globulin is another wonderful tool which is underutilized, undertaught. We must start doing this much earlier. It is a glycopeptide secreted by liver, binds to sex hormones, we all know, and in presence of obesity, it goes down, which will cause increase in the insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. Normally in pregnancy, it is normal or mildly low, but in GDM, again, it goes down significantly. The only challenge is that it cannot be done in the first trimester. The specificity is not there in the first trimester, but early second trimester, that is 14 to 16th, probably, if these levels are significantly low, these mothers are very highly possibly the patients of GDM you are dealing with. Glycemic markers, what Dr. Lakshmi has beautifully talked about, serum insulin levels, glucagon levels, glycated albumin levels, they do not have definitive predictive correlation, so I will not recommend them. Other biomarkers like lipids, placenta-related factors, I'm just going to show you the entire bird's eye view of all this. These are all the biomarkers, the sensitivity and their specificity. Like you can say the biochemical biomarkers, these are the molecular biomarkers or genetic biomarkers. These are urine biomarkers, inflammatory biomarkers, maybe probably vitamin D's and sex hormone binding globulin, HSCRP. These are the only two which have a very high sensitivity and a very good specificity probably and can be used clinically. Now I'll present to you in next 2 minutes my team's data and what we have done. And the same thought process as Dr. Lakshmi was talking about. Is this that we were not thinking about mothers developing diabetes in future. We were thinking about this mother not developing diabetes even during the subsequent period of the pregnancy. Or maybe probably she all develops, she has a stable course. So this is my last 2 years data with my 3 obstetric gynecology friends. We screened around 202 AMCs in the first and the early second trimester. And we did use that clinical predictive model with a good detailed history. We noted it down. We did OGTT on them, plus or minus IGT as she was rightly talking about. We did not use fasting. We used the IGT as a test. We also looked at A1Cs. We also looked at HSCRP, and we looked at insulin. Unfortunately, that time when we did this, this thought of doing a 1.5 AG was not there. And of course, most of the patients could not afford the SHBG levels because it is very expensive. Now, out of this, we have picked up 23 diabetes in pregnancies. Out of that, 18 were GDM, 5 were type 2 diabetes. And out of these 5 type 2 diabetes, 3 were diagnosed for the first time, where their A1C was more than 7 at the time of the estimation in the first trimester. So there was no question. They were classically labeled as type 2 diabetes and they were treated accordingly. 18 GDMs we picked up, and 2 were picked up in the first trimester, that means between 18 to 12th week, and 7 we picked up in the early second trimester, that is 14 to 16th week. And out of these 9 that we picked up early, look at the impact. 6 were managed only with a good therapeutic lifestyle control. And as Dr. Lakshmi was talking about, that they should not be undernourished. They should not be overnourished. So with a qualified dietitian and the exercise specialist team, we manage them. And only 2 of them out of this, those who require very small doses of prandial insulin. We all know that overall, if it is a pure GDM, you do not require too much of insulin to manage, but they require just 2 units or 3 units of insulin, and the babies were all fine. Now, I think last line is very important, that the babies were all fine. So to summarize, friends, there is a good amount of emerging evidence that it is too late, probably, when you are trying to test somebody for GDM, a mother for GDM, at 24 weeks. I think that is criminal. We need to start testing them earlier, and especially utilize this clinical predictive model. Pick them up early, get sensitized to it. There are different methodologies which can be developed in our day-to-day clinical practice. But this is the way to look forward. So the clinical predictive models, along with ethnicity, family history, obesity, past GDM, personal history, nutrition history, addiction history, fatty liver, all these things can be used as probably clinical predictive models. Along with that, we can do the metabolic profiling biomarkers in them. Maybe possibly that we may successfully screen, and this slide Dr. Lakshmi has already shown. But this is really, I would love to dedicate this, these words that I could write it down to Dr. Lakshmi. And these are the small words that I thought that in this generation of maybe probably, in the gentle curl of the healthy womb, a new life blossoms, ready to grow. Nurtured by mother's health and care, they inherited the legacy of strength and flair. A sanitary pregnancy sets the stage for a future breed strong and engaged. From the first heartbeat to tiny kicks, each milestone reach, blessing to fix. Through nourishing, mindful choices made, mother shapes the destiny like a serenade. For in her wellness lies the key to a vibrant world the new generation will see. To cherish the miracle, cradle the grace, a salutary pregnancy, a gift to embrace. Let's strive our vigor for the little ones ahead, for their future depends on the path we tread. Thank you very much once again for your patient listening. I really appreciate all of your presence, and thank you, Mayur and team.